Life is a wonderful journey with so many different stops. These stops actually stay in our memories forever. These were probably the best years of my life. I think probably the best year that I could really show how I can serve my nation and my country and our people.
Welcome to Autobiography, a series where we meet individuals who've made a significant impact on the UAE. And today's guest is His Excellency Sultan Al Mansoori. Thanks for joining us today on Autobiography.
It's actually my pleasure to be here, and thank you for having me here.
You're part of a generation that was able to see two very different types of the UAE, to live two very different lifestyles here. Take us back to childhood days, living in Jumeirah, 1960s, pre-unification. What was life like back then?
Well, for us at that time, which is growing up in Jumeirah and 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐞, there used to be a hamlet of about 6 villages. Each one maybe have 15, 20 homes in it, separated by a distance of maybe 3-4 kilometers between each other, connected by one road. It's way, way far from what's called the city of Dubai. So it takes you maybe between half an hour to an hour drive to go to proper Dubai, which was mainly on the creek side of it. The hamlets in Jumeirah and 𝐬𝐻, their main sort of survival was on the sea, fishing, maybe also some pearl diving during certain months of the year. But also they were growing a lot of date palms where they produce dates, white, beautiful sand dunes. And there used to be a lot of wells which actually irrigate these groves. The people were like one family, all these different 6 villages. They know each other very well, and they might be related to each other also. Early morning in the summer months, we'll go to the sea and we'll swim maybe until 10 or 11 o'clock during the day, and then we go back again home. Usually it's very strict to leave between like midday till about 4 o'clock because of the heat, because of the sun and so on. So our parents would not allow us to go out during this period of time. So during these times also, TV started coming, black and white. People were very interested. They were in certain homes in these villages, and the families and people would go and watch TV there together. So it was really something new. This is where it was our new sort of opening to the world. It's an eye to see what is happening outside of what we have in our small village or outside of Dubai as a whole.
When you talk about a gathering place, so any place there would be a TV would be kind of a majlis by default.
It can be, yes, or it can be a family also inside, because as kids we are allowed to go in with the families, and you sit with the family, with the mother, with the sister, with the father. So it was okay for us. But the access to through this TV, as I said, it gave us a knowledge of what is happening in the world. At that time, toward the end of the 60s, there was also the war in Vietnam. So we could see the effect of the war on the people there, and we could feel and sympathize with what was happening in that side of it. On the other side, there was the music coming from Europe, the Beatles, and all the music of that Beatles, and the long hair and a different kind of style. So all of these things coming to a society which was a little bit reserved, and we had to think about how can we adapt to this, how can we assimilate this, how do we understand this in a way that could be good to us. Is this really progress? Is it development? So there were a lot of talks and ideas about what is going on. Some really very restrictive kind of approach sometimes from some families with the boys, if they have long hair or something like that. It was really something, this is really big. You have to do something about your son because his hair is long now, or he's wearing this Charleston type of pants and so on. So it was really quite an opening into another society or another societies in the world that all of a sudden we were reacting to, as opposed to our typical normal life that we have had for thousands of years here, which our grandparents and parents have actually lived through over the years.
If you give me an aerial view of Dubai then,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm picturing sand dunes, but of
Yeah.
course not everything was sand dunes.
Yes, most of the buildings were actually around the creek. The concentration were around the creek. Shindaga is one area that has a lot of residential and continue to do that historically. Deira side, which we call it Bardeira, it has some of these buildings that were built in the 40s and the 50s, or the 60s of the last century. On the opposite side, the Bar Dubai also have all the souks, which were connected to each other and right on the creek. And some of these homes were also sort of immediately on the creek side itself. So you take the Abra, and you could see them lined up over the creek. Beautiful sight, and hence this is why Dubai at one time was called the Venice of the East. You have that sort of an impression of that place, of that location. So it all sort of added up to this beautiful structure of a city that you have the old part of it, some modern part looking other side. And then as you move a little bit, there was Port Rashid, and then which was behind Port Rashid was nothing but a desert actually. And then you start with the villages of Jumeirah. It's more on the coastal area, starting from Etihad Museum, and moving all the way for almost 25 kilometers toward where Burj Al Arab right now. That was the end of what we call Dubai. There was a roundabout, and you have to come back, and this is two-lane street that goes back and forth, and that was the end of it.
And you're calling it the Villages of Jumeirah. I mean, today Jumeirah is one of the most sought-after neighborhoods, but then these were more like villages.
Yeah, and let me give you an idea why. Because a lot of people, they come to Dubai, they come to Jumeirah, and they do not understand where the naming of Jumeirah 1, Jumeirah 2, Jumeirah 3, 5, 6 came from. It actually, at those times, this was the sort of separated kind of small villages, where the first one was called Jumeirah 1, which is where the Four Seasons Hotel right now. And then as you move on for another 3-4 kilometers, you have Jumeirah number 2, and nothing in between. And then you move on to the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And on the parallel to that, actually, on the southern side of the road, as we call it here, it used to be the date palm groves. I mean, it was like probably 15, 20 kilometers, almost like a forest, extending from where the museum, the Etihad Museum, all the way to where Burj Al Arab right now. And beautiful white sand dunes. I mean, the most beautiful one you probably have seen. It probably developed over millions and millions of years because of the coast, and because of the Gulf, and the ties that we have had over thousands of years and millions of years, created these high sort of white sand dunes, pure white sand dunes.
You mentioned Etihad Museum.
Yes.
And the Union House.
Yes.
On the 2nd of December 1971 is also a moment that you remember very vividly. Yes,
it's very much, for during the 60s, used to be the Trucial States, what was known as the UAE, as what is now the UAE plus Qatar and Bahrain. The union was supposed to be of 9 Emirates, but Qatar and Bahrain decided to go their own way, and the union was announced on December the 2nd, 1971. So for a long time, for us, I would say a long time in that case, which is the years that we were in the school, the flag that we had was Dubai flag, but it was also the aspiration, and we knew in advance that something is happening with the meeting that the leadership of different Emirates were having. We could see it in the news sometime, the newspapers, sometime in some of the magazines, the radio, we can hear it very well, which was really the access to what was happening news-wise in the UAE and around us was through the radio. So the announcement of the union of the UAE was probably the one I would remember all of the rest of my life. It was announced on the radio. We hear it, at least us as kids, late afternoon. And there was an announcement of the colors of the flags of the union of the UAE. So as kids, we went and we got our homework, sort of blank paper, and we start coloring it. And then we put it on a stick, and then we start moving and going around with the flag outside in the neighborhood. So all the kids were behind that. It's a very sort of, natural way of reaction of that feeling.
Do you remember what you felt? Was it
It was-
excitement? Were you happy that there's unification?
Yeah, very much. We were quite young, but we were mature to a certain extent to understand what was going on and what was happening, and that we are now coming to a new stage in our life, in our region, in our country also. And maybe we felt also a little bit more of a commitment to where the future is going with this nation, with this country, and how we are going to be part of that, and how we will be contributing to the, hopefully, development and progress of that nation. And after 50 years, I think we did quite good.
Taking you back then, as a kid, were there celebrations on the streets? Were you celebrating in the classroom? Was there this atmosphere of celebration?
There was, of course, huge celebrations, but mainly not in the villages and outside. It was more in the cities, in the heart of the cities. One was around where the Etihad Museum right now, Abu Dhabi also, some other Emirates. It's usually the traditional, songs and dances and that sort of things. So it all sort of accumulated into a general happy feeling for all of us. And with that, we didn't really, in the beginning, understood it fully what was going on. With the leadership of late His Highness Sheikh Zayed, the father of our country, we began to listen and to hear and understand what is our future and where are we going and what are the things that we need to pay attention to.
Did it seem like a promise for a better future?
Absolutely, in every way.
And as a kid, you understood this
very
somewhat?
Very much. For me, I was a good reader. I used to read. Any piece of paper that has writing on it, I would go and read it because it was interesting. It was the only way of getting knowledge. It was not available like what you see it right now on the internet and so on. So anything that you could find, you will read it and read it and read it, because it's the only thing sometimes you might have. Mm-hmm. So with that in mind, probably the statement that Sheikh Zayed has stressed on is equality of genders, education for both. Education, education, education. This is the way how we get our nation, our country from where it is into something that is much, much more progressive and much more acceptable to within the range of the other nations, developed nations. So that's stuck in our heads. All the generation that were there, it was how we can make our country the best. And the first step to that is to have the best of education. And remember, I mean, we as a nation, as people in the UAE, we were not rich. We were actually average or sometimes even poor people here in the UAE. And that also gave us a more sort of adamant feeling of the need to change. This is before the oil, because the oil came sometime in Dubai, for example, in the 60s, late 60s. But before that, it was this sort of sense that our position in the world has to change. We need to go up. We need to develop. And the only way to do that is to have education, the best of education. So, and that has actually really gave us the fruit that we were looking for.
So you're talking about the hunger to be a part and explore the outside world as well. And for you, as a child, you already had that experience going away during the summers. Yes. What can you share about your time away from the family, away from Dubai, in no other but the UK?
Well, do you remember the summer days I told you about being spent on the beach? July, August, when it is hot, but we still go to the beach early in the morning. That came to an end in 1975, where one day my father announced, this summer you will go and learn English in England. So it was not only me, but a number of other friends of mine who are also from Jumeirah. So one day we had to fly on Middle East, I think it was July, airline. It was the only airline that connected to Europe via Beirut at that time. So you transit through Beirut. Once we arrived in Heathrow Airport, we were received by this old English gentleman. And he was speaking Arabic with a Dubai accent. And the name was Mr. Taylor. And he actually, and apparently was in Dubai with Sheikh Rashid during the 40s and the 50s of the last century. and he mastered Arabic and with the UAE or Dubai accent. So it was a nice, wonderful surprise for us because our English was fine, but it was more of a school kind of English. We did not use it very often. So from there, in London, you come in and you see all the traffic, people everywhere, and straight from there, they took us to the train station, which was Waterloo, and to be transported on trains to Bournemouth. But that's not the end of the story. It's actually to go to a small hamlet called Wimborne, a very tiny village, beautiful, very nice, where we had to stay with English families.
So you were not there as part of an educational program per se. You're there with families experiencing the culture, the people, and learning English through that experience.
Absolutely. But also you go to an English, a foreign student English school. Mm-hmm. So this is where I come across with so many different nationalities. They were from Europe, Germany, Holland, Switzerland, Spain, Italy, and of course some of the Arab countries, as well as some from the Latin American countries. It's the first time you experience, you can hear the different languages over here. There you connect with these people, try to sometimes understand what they are saying, and you're pushing yourself to learn more. So it was really interesting environment for us. One is the school. The other one was the English tradition, either in terms of the tradition on supper, tea time, and all these other things, which was to us is different than what they have, and also the food. So the food was different in the UK than what we have over here.
So your first excursion is in Europe, in the UK, and then I'm hopping to the next experience, educational, higher education in the United States, in Arizona,
Yes.
studying engineering.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that was probably one of the greatest experiences for me, but also for all of my colleagues of the same age. I mentioned earlier that the education agenda was very critical for us as a nation. And the statement came from the leadership is you need to carry the burden of the progress that we need to be able to achieve in this nation. So as high school graduates, we have the great opportunities, again, coming from the government, to go on scholarships around the world, mainly in Europe and the United States, at the university levels. The style of life was totally different than what I saw in the UK. It's more open, more liberal, more sort of interesting to see how the Americans actually were acting to certain situations, which was totally different than what you see in Europe or in the UK. US years were very interesting. The target was to finish, to learn, to understand. And we were a small group of Emirati students at the university, which was Arizona State University. I mean, we were probably 8 or 9 students in a population of the university of about 38,000 students. I think the structural thinking you see in America in terms of putting targets, working for these targets, working very hard, making sure, and the second thing is the ethics around it that's being built around it, and how we can also strengthen that side of us with us, which was really quite good for us. I mean, and the American always make a statement, which is there is nothing impossible, okay? And we came out with a ministry here, which was actually nothing impossible, just in the last 5-6 years. Again, it matches with that kind of thinking. So it is that sort of determination and ambition to achieve and to do things, which really reflected on us and the generation that graduated from these universities in the US that came over here, and they have built actually the UAE and built Dubai also. Most of them has got very sort of important positions, other, town planning, where the master planning of Dubai was done. This was one of my best colleagues actually was heading that. The airports, for example, that has been developed, again, another graduate from even the same university who has developed this really huge project in there and was really one of the top leaders who made that possible, of course, with the support of the leadership here in Dubai. So this is actually the sense of what has been learned and has been achieved afterward from that education, that excellent education that we have in the US. And to see this and to see the results, this is something many people do not understand. Because the question always is raised, how is it possible for the UAE to be able to achieve something like this in such a short time? And the question is always, the answer for it is, we have strong leadership, a good leadership with a clear vision on where they want to go, a good team to execute it, and also, accountability.
So when you came back from the US with all the knowledge that you gained, the work ethic that you learned from, you started working, I think your first job was at Cargo Village.
Exactly, at the Dubai Civil Aviation, under the leadership of His Highness Sheikh Ahmed bin Saeed Al Maktoum. And he is, by the way, one of the best leaders that you can have. I learned a lot from him. So the Dubai Cargo Village project was coming up, and I was asked to lead the project there in terms of the design and the processes that need to be put in there. Of course, there was a team members, including Danata, including Emirates Airline, including the customs. All of us worked very hard together to build the Dubai Cargo Village.
And this was a step that would greatly contribute to Dubai's economy and to building the foundation of Dubai's economy as we see it today.
Absolutely. And the concept of the sea and air was quite big at that time. But during the process of building, we managed to build it on time, and eventually the Gulf War came in. I mean, we were almost going to open it. We put a date there, and the Gulf War came in, and we have to stop the opening and postpone it. As soon as it was reopened again, it proved to be a huge success. The air cargo system and operation contributed hugely to the aid programs that was going to different countries in the region and beyond that. But also it participated quite strongly in the sea and air concept of shipping goods from Southeast Asia and China and Singapore and so on by sea to Dubai, and then by air from here to destination into Europe, what they call the just-in-time concept. And that has really proven to be an excellent concept that Dubai has benefited from. Actually, the region has also benefited from. But also, we have been able to extend that concept to different hubs around the world where this kind of concept is possible to do, because a lot of time, the air-to-air concept can be expensive. But the combination of sea and air can be a much more affordable financial model for the logistics of the goods and cargo.
And for you, at the age of 24, you were already Director General of Air Cargo Village, which is very young.
Yes.
For quite a big responsibility.
Yes. Yeah. I had a wonderful team, and I have had also a great support, as I said, from His Highness Sheikh Ahmed, as well as the team at the Dubai Civil Aviation. With that achievement, after some time, you at that age, you need to. I am a man who makes his own decisions about life, and I remember I told you about how you learn more of targets and processes and how you want to reach this one during your life. It has always been my motto in my life. So at one time I said, okay, at this age, I have learned a lot in this area. I need to move on. So from there, I moved on to another position. I didn't have really a plan for it, but eventually it came. And that was at the Dubai Chamber of Commerce, where I wanted to learn more about the businesses. I wanted to connect with who is who in the businesses in Dubai at that time. All the private sector, all the businesses that was operating and managing Dubai are actually within the board of the Dubai Chamber of Commerce.
What was the conversation like then? What was the ambition for Dubai in those years?
Dubai went through a number of stages of how they putting their targets, and I like that, because first it was more of the commercial capital of the UAE. This is in the 70s. Eventually it moved to the commercial capital of the Gulf, the Middle East, and then eventually of the world. And I think they have achieved all of this at the end of the day. But during the periods of the 1990s, Dubai was extending more outside of the region of the Middle East. So it was moving more toward Europe, and concentration a lot on Europe, concentration a lot on Southeast Asia. The tourism was beginning to become much more important also for us. Emirates Airline was already established in 1985, so it became an important factor of the whole this business, tourism, economy structure. Everything seemed to be working together, and everyone was sort of connecting with each other with the same target of how we can develop Dubai, but also diversify the economy of Dubai. So one gateway to that one is the Dubai Chamber of Commerce. This is where the private sector is. This is where the investment in industries, trade, the finance and everything is actually in that area. So these were actually the years that we saw a lot of trade and commercial delegations going from Dubai to the world. It was a huge concentration of this. Explain the case of Dubai. What are our targets? What are we doing? What are our aims? How we can be partners with you? So I was actually part of these teams that traveled from Dubai, being within the structure of the Dubai Chamber of Commerce, where I have to give speeches also, provide support for the president of the Dubai Chamber of Commerce, and be able to make a change in there with some of the skills I used to have at that time there.
I want you to take us to 2004, I believe 1st of November, to a really transformational event in your life.
Absolutely. I mean, there was a huge and great transformation in my life, family also, of course. This was on November 1st, 2004. It was Ramadan at that time. I remember the time also. It was 8:45 in the evening. Ramadan, in the evening we get together with some friends and we were having coffee and some sweets and so on. And my mobile phone rang. I picked the phone and on the other side said, "This is Sultan Al Mansoori?" I said, "Yes." He said, "This is Abdullah bin Zayed. This is actually Sheikh Abdullah, His Highness Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed." And he said, "Sultan, the new government has been formed and you are the Minister of Communication, which is transportation here in the UAE." And I was for a minute, what? And he repeated again. I said, "Okay, thank you, Your Highness." I hung up. And the people around the table, they were looking at me as if something really said, "What happened?" I said, "Well, this is what I was informed." They said, "What?" I said, "Well, I'm not sure, because I always have this independence."
And what went through your mind? Because it's not as though you had applied for a position.
No, I have not applied for a position. I never thought of working in the government myself. I had experience more in the private sector, some of the local government, but not at the federal government. I mean, this is a big, it's a big challenge. It's a new opportunity for us. Can it be work between the knowledge of the private sector, some of the local government, and this is a federal, So next morning, 7:30, I was at the office, and there was this secretary looking at me as who was this stranger walking to the office. I didn't know that we even have to, give the oath before you go in there. But it was a good step that I go and see what is happening in there and be able to understand how the start is going to be. These were probably the best years of my life. I think probably the best year that I could really show how I can serve my nation and my country and our people.
You're tasked with helping transition the UAE to a non-oil dependent economy.
Yeah. I mean, the goal of UAE from the start was how to build a strong economy that is very diversified, with the different Emirates focus on different sectors of the economies. Dubai, to be more particular, was more on trade and businesses and so on, and Abu Dhabi was more on oil at that time. And the other Emirates, some trade and some manufacturing and so on. With the idea of that has been carried over so many years, we had also to look into different fields. By the years 2008, 2009, 2010, the idea of the knowledge economy was coming up. It was developed to an extent that it has to be a pillar of our future development. We came at that time with a strategy on the knowledge economy, how innovation can contribute to the sizable percent of it to the economy of the UAE, and how we can put the regulation that can govern that, how we understand the experiences of other nations, and how the countries like Korea, for example, such as Japan, China, Italy,
so you were looking
the US.
East
We're looking
and West.
East and West. We're just sort of exploring all the potential of how we can find a start for us somewhere by which we can build that pillar of knowledge economy for us. So we started by signing cooperation agreements with so many different nations. As I said, Korea was one of them. Sweden was another one. Italy was another one. the US and Canada, for example, was other ones that we try to gain as much as possible knowledge, but also partnership in this area. We know that we didn't have much over here, but we need to build it, and we need to build it fast. So we started with that sort of approach to it.
And the strategy was to have economic relations push the bilateral relations in general. And you opened up new relations through economic channels.
Absolutely, absolutely. So this is how we start doing it. But this is on the, as I said, on the knowledge economy was how we create a stronger pillar in that area and how we give a contribution of the knowledge economy to the GDP of the UAE. But on the other side, we are also looking at what about the new nations that are developing and growing? For example, Central Asian. For example, Azerbaijan on one side, and then you got Kazakhstan on the other side, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan. All of these nations are newly sort of opening up, and we need to create a relationship with them, but on the economic agenda side of it. Bilateral trade, tourism, aviation, maybe a touch on some of the investments on manufacturing and other things. And we have actually succeeded because we were, as UAE, were the first one to be able to start linking with these by airlines. I mean, you have Emirates airline, you have Fly Dubai, for example, that have the capacity to reach these nations. And I was also the chairman of the Civil Aviation Authority for the UAE. So that also gave me another sort of window toward the combination need of doing trade, but also creating the connectivity between them, passenger-wise, but also cargo-wise, air cargo-wise, because these are landlocked countries.
When people ask today, how does the UAE make money? How does Dubai make money? What's the best answer to that?
Being open, being free, being liberal in all sectors, being welcoming. Of course, we have laws and regulations that governs that, and everyone has to abide by that. So coming here and feeling the energy that this place in. I had some last week, there was the government summit, and there were some people who came from the US, and it was the first time over here. I had maybe a coffee with them, and they said, you know what? There is an energy in this place. There is something that really makes us so energetic. It's the whole atmosphere that you see around here that gives you all this ability to be part of this whole process, to be able to join this process, to be able to contribute to this. And I think the regulation, the system, and the environment in terms of the offices, the people, the transportation, the ease by which you can do this business, and the safety and stability that we have in this nation and in this city, for example, that is missing in many other parts of the world.
You talk about openness as a pillar, as the key component maybe to the success of the economy, culturally, being open. And then I would wonder, because the culture here is so important, so how would you balance the preservation of your own cultural heritage with globalization, with this openness that you continue to push for?
We are, it's a very good question. We are very comfortable people of what we are, with our culture, where we come from. We are very solid. It's like a big tree with strong roots. We believe in that. And that tree can also add up things around it, to make it much more beautiful. So this is where adapt to what is right coming from outside, but meanwhile believing in what has been developed over thousands of years in our culture is something that is really valuable. It created our own sort of personality, our individual, our unique model that we can build on. We don't want to overlook what our history has given us. We need to build on it. To do that, it's fine. Part of the globalization now is to be able to assimilate, adjust, and build on what you have already done.
Are you scared that you might lose part of the culture?
There is always that, yes, chance. But it is how we really teach our children. And the government is aware about that, and they came up with a number of programs to solidify that approach of understanding the culture, assimilating it with the younger generation to understand it and add it up. We cannot stop that. It's coming. But how we can accommodate it to become more of an Emirati side of our personality also. It's not wrong, to see what is good and what's possible from outside and add it up to all the positive things that we have generated over the years here.
But you're taking it back to education.
Yes, absolutely. Education is very important, yes. Yeah.
So if we're looking ahead, we're looking at the future, both economically, but not only, what position do you see the UAE having when it comes to finding solutions to global problems?
Yeah.
How is the UAE today, and how do you envision it 10 years from now?
I think you probably see that our approach is very simple. Don't complicate things. Make sure that you understand the other sides. Politics is one side of it, but the economy is the one that really makes a difference for the population in general. And this is what all people around the world are interested in, is the well-being of the individuals. How can we address the issues of poverty, for example, collectively? How we can address the issue of the environment collectively. We had COP28 recently, and a lot of good sort of resolution came out of that. We need the world to work together. This is actually how the UAE is actually functioning. The world has to work in a peaceful environment together. Leadership have to understand that. They have to provide for the right teams. There are common agendas that really united us all. The social, economic, environment, education, other areas also. But we need to act on it. Leadership has to act on it. Individuals has to act on it. It's not just the responsibility of the leadership alone. It's every maybe sector of the society has to be participating in this, supporting this. And what this leads us into first is how we can achieve peace and prosperity in our world.
So what does the future hold for you?
I'm very happy where I am right now. Satisfied, as I mentioned to you earlier, the stages of life where we start young, education, university, work, hoping to get a good position, move on with life, and then a stage of life where we have to understand we have responsibility toward our society, toward the world, toward our family, and maybe also toward ourselves by creating a balanced sort of formula between all the responsibility that we have and between ourselves and family. This is where I am right now.
Excellency, thank you so much for your
My
time
pleasure.
today.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for giving me the chance here.